Miami Hurricanes have to replace the production from losing 3 of their top 4 tight ends from last season. But with the way Elija Lofton and Alex Bauman have been playing, the stock in that room is going up.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen each and every day. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about whether or not this is a make or break year for Mario Cristobal and what that even means. Expectations are high this year. They should be high. Players spoke out after day 2 of practice on Friday. Some interesting insights on the defensive line, defensive backfield, and on the running backs. But I wanted to lead off today's episode talking about the tight ends because I was going through my notes from the last couple of days and what we talked about on our Thursday and Friday episodes. And I think I neglected that group a little bit because Alex Bauman, who's the transfer from Tulane, Elija Lofton, those are going to be the leaders in that room. They're not the only tight ends who are going to get on the field this year, but they have both looked really good the first 2 days, especially the second day. Really felt like Friday was an even sharper day overall for the offense. It's hard for me to make full assessments because we don't get to watch the entire practice, but the feeling was maybe the offense won the second day, or at least the media viewing part of it. And the tight ends were a big piece of that. You notice really in the one-on-one drills, especially how difficult Lofton and Bauman are to deal with. They both had really good reps in the one-on-one. Elija Lofton, who, we talked about him in the past as like the secret weapon on Miami's offense. I can't call it a secret anymore because everyone knows about this guy and what he's expected to do this year. So I'll just call him a weapon, or like Weapon X Lofton. Very versatile weapon all over the field, and he's especially dangerous in space. And when you hear his offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, talking about Lofton, he's mentioned this on multiple occasions. I remember Dawson saying this back during spring ball, and he said it on Wednesday when he was available during media days, that the ball just finds him, that, quarterbacks have like a knack of just always seeing where Lofton is on the field. The football tends to go to your best players, and Lofton is one of those. And so you can expect him to line up in multiple different spots this year. And hopefully Elija Lofton is going to become Carson Beck's best friend, because we have seen Beck in the past really thrive when he's got great tight end play. So Lofton and Bauman as well can become that for him. Now, Bauman, I guess you could call him more of a traditional inline tight end, versatile guy, good blocker as well. And of course, Lofton is an excellent blocker. I don't want to take that away from him either. Both of these tight ends have some versatility, Lofton more so. And Bauman, I expect, could really be a weapon, especially in short yardage and in the red zone. He caught 7 touchdown passes last year at Tulane, had 5 the year prior. So this is a guy who usually finds a way to get open in the end zone, Alex Bauman. As far as, Elija Lofton last year at Miami hauled in 9 grabs for 151 yards and a touchdown, but he was basically being used as the 4th tight end last year. Now, he did have like higher overall receiving stats than Cam McCormick, but, last year you had Elijah Arroyo leading your tight end room. That was the biggest loss, him now in the NFL. You had Riley Williams, who transferred to Oregon State, wanted to be closer to home, was Miami's 2nd leading receiver from that room. Then Elija Lofton, 3rd leading receiver, Cam McCormick, the 4th. So you lost 3 out of those 4. And yet I think the tight end room is in really good shape again this year. Could even maybe have a better overall year for that group if they reach their potential. So Bauman last year at Tulane, 20 receptions, 212 yards. I mentioned the 7 touchdown grabs, but there's depth even beyond these guys. And I was feeling great about the tight ends coming out of yesterday, because freshman tight end Luka Gilbert, who's 6'7", he's got that gigantic frame. We think of him more as like a blocking tight end, but the dude can catch. He had a He had a really good sideline catch, showed a lot of body control, making a diving grab during Friday's practice. And Brock Schott, another true freshman tight end. And again, we'll see how many of these freshmen get on the field and how often, but there is precedent for it. I mean, Elija Lofton was a true freshman last year. He got on the field some. Brock Schott has looked really good so far in training camp, and he looked good going back to spring. And by the way, on Brock Schott, I had meant to mention this on yesterday's episode, and it slipped my mind. This is incredible for a true freshman who hasn't even played in a real game yet. Over the summer, Schott set the new Miami Hurricanes tight end squat record. The guy's been in the building for like 5 minutes, and he squats 560 pounds, sets the all-time record for Miami tight ends. And so you imagine he's probably going to break his own record a couple of times. He's got a lot of lower body strength if he's already squatting that much. And he moves well for a big guy. He's around 6'3", 6'4", around 250 pounds. And he very fluid motion for Brock Schott. Like, this guy looks as though he's going to be that, prototype Miami tight end, and is going to end up being a really good one for the future. And, Miami also has Jack Nickel, who's a good blocking tight end. Luke Nickel's older brother transferred in this year. And Hunter Carver, I know Jackson Carver, his brother, who's also in the room, picked up an injury during spring, but there's quite a bit there. And I guess we look at the tight end room kind of similarly to the way we look at the receiver room, that there's a lot of talent there, but you're replacing so many outgoing guys from last year that it's just a matter of them stepping up, proving it on the field, and building that chemistry with their quarterback. They've all been really working hard with that. And the receiver room, some of these young guys are continuing to show juice in practice. Joshua Moore is becoming a guy who produces plays every single day at 6'4", 215 pounds, really big target. And he also has long strides and is a good deep weapon. Moore has had a couple of deep ball grabs. He had one the first day. Luke Nickel threw him a deep ball that he caught, and he caught a deep ball on Friday from Judd Anderson. So he continues to make plays every practice. Malachi Toney continues to be someone who has looked sharp, and others as well. CJ Daniels, he moves like a veteran out there. I think he's going to get a lot of targets this year. JoJo Trader, I can't say enough about him, continues to be a standout. I think he, in my humble opinion, is going to end up being Miami's leading receiver, at least leading receiver from the wide receiver room this year. And Tony Johnson, the transfer slot, is someone who he's a really good route runner. He always finds ways to get open, even if he's not necessarily the quickest guy on the field, right? I mean, we said that about the previous slot receiver at Miami, who had a couple of pretty good seasons back-to-back the last couple of years. We'll talk a little bit more about the DBs on the other side. And we did have Zechariah Poyser spoke to the media on Friday and gave us some insight into that group. So you want to keep it locked right here. It's a Saturday. You can't ruin a weekend. We're talking Miami Hurricanes training camp. By the way, camp is closed to the media today. They are practicing on Saturday, but there's no media availability. But you want to keep it locked for more info right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, it is hot in South Florida. When I'm out there covering practices and I'm walking around campus and trying to stay on top of my routine, whether that's workouts, long days, staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that's where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. And guys, you feel the difference. And they also taste great. I love the cherry limeade flavor. It's a game changer after a workout or on those extra busy days. Drip Drop has become my go-to, especially during these long summer South Florida days when I know I'm going to be sweating it out. And right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before that heat hits hard. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. If you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up to become a Locked On Canes insider. I include the link in the show description below. Click that link. Try it free for 14 days. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours, breaking news, recruiting updates, practice updates, show updates, one-on-one questions and answers. Try it free for 14 days. Then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. So we've talked a lot here on Locked On Canes about the new defensive backs because there's a lot of transfers and a lot of high-quality players like Xavier Lucas. I think he's a godsend for this program, Lucas, the transfer from Wisconsin, because between he and OJ Frederique, they're going to have two sides of the field locked down, in my opinion. They're both big physical cover corners. And so, OJ is doing well. That's, of course, not a new guy. That's, someone who graded out well last year as a true freshman who's heading into his sophomore year. And Damari Brown is also practicing very well. And I'm happy about that, especially since I know a lot of you guys ask how Damari is doing, who had some bad luck with injury last year, missed most of the season. He's going to find ways to get on the field. And Damari Brown also maybe could have some positional versatility. And again, I'm speaking out of turn here. I'm not speaking for the coaches on this whatsoever, but I wonder if he might, get a little burned potentially at safety, or if he's going to be so high up the corner rotation that he's still going to get on the field a lot. But Damari is looking good. Yesterday we mentioned how well second-year safety Dylan Day is doing. He's been an outstanding performer so far in practices. Amari Wallace, the true freshman, he had an interception in practice yesterday. I think it was on a Luke Nickel pass. Bryce Fitzgerald has been working at safety. He looks good so far, another true freshman. So let's hear more about the DBs. Zechariah Poyser, transfer safety out of Jacksonville State, who I think is going to be a starter here at Miami. He spoke to the media yesterday. He mentioned Poyser, he's put on 15 pounds since he arrived at the U, that he got here in January around 185. He's gone up to 200 because his emphasis has been he wants to play more physical. Now, he was playing very physical at Jacksonville State last year, but this is, a higher level now of football, Power 4 football. He wanted to put on that extra size and quality muscle, and he's done that so far. Poyser has also mentioned that he's become a lot more of an active communicator, that's something he's been working on since he got to Miami, because communication, he says, has a big emphasis in Miami's defense, and you have to communicate properly to succeed. I know that's something Corey Heatherman and Mario Cristobal are emphasizing, and the communication was something that was lacking last year on the defense, specifically in the defensive backfield. So Poyser feels like he's really improved the communication aspect as well. We also heard from Mark Fletcher, who, is one of my favorite human beings. I mean, Fletch is such a good dude. He talked about some of the defenders that he goes up against. He specifically called out, in a good way, Justin Scott and Ruben Bain as two players who are standing out on the defensive line. He added, though, really all of those guys, go down the list. All those guys are doing their thing, but the ones that he singled out were Justin Scott and Ruben Bain. And, for Bain, he's got a chip on his shoulder because last year he takes it personal that the defense struggled last year. And, he missed a lot of time with a calf injury. He played through that injury for the back nine of the season last year. But Bain has actually dropped a little weight to get a little faster and more explosive compared to where he was last year. But he's extremely motivated to kind of regain and surpass his 2023 form. And then as far as Justin Scott goes, I'm looking forward to chatting with him throughout the season. Former 5-star recruit. He's got all the physical tools, and it seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders as well. The word on Scott is he's extra motivated this year because he knows the opportunity to start, the opportunity to get significant playing time. It's right in front of him. He was behind a lot of upperclassmen last year. Like, he knows he is right there, and he's probably at this point, in my opinion, trending towards being one of the two starting defensive tackles this year. And it's good to know from Mark Fletcher that that's someone that's getting his attention going up against him in practice. Fletcher also talked about Shamar Brown, who's the newest running back in the room from Miami, 5'11", 220 pounds, out of North Dakota State, rushed for 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns last year, won an FCS championship, And Fletcher said as to what Brown adds to the room, he's another physical runner, downhill, not trying to get too many moves on you. He's a great person off the field, too, a chill guy. He fits right in with us. And, did an episode about this midweek. So you know how I feel about Miami's running back room. Big, powerful, punishment. I was going to say the 3 Ps, but big doesn't start with a P. It's the weekend. I'm a little off my game today, guys. But powerful, they provide punishment. The top 3 anyway. Jordan Lyle around 205, Fletcher 225, Brown 220. They're going to be punishing defenses and wearing down defenses throughout these games. So I feel good about that. Another top player who spoke to the media yesterday is Inez Cooper. He mentioned, somebody brought up to him that Miami's offensive line was rated like number 8 in the country by Pro Football Focus. I don't think he cares what outsiders think about that, but he does think Miami's going to be the number 1 offensive line in the country. He feels great about the continuity, having 4 of your 5 starters back. By the way, everyone says James Brockermeyer is doing really well at center, so I'm not worried about that whatsoever. I think he's going to fit right in. And then you have the other 4 starters with Markel Bell, either McCoy or Ryan Rodriguez at left guard, Cooper at right guard, CeCe Maui Noah at right tackle. So they feel great about their room. He says everyone's buying in. Cooper said it's a whole bunch of new faces, the quarterback and receiving room, but everyone is buying in. Some periods were good, some off, but we haven't had a whole day off despite all the new faces, he says. He says everyone is taking everything personal. The offense is coming together very well. We're still trying to get to learn each other more, but it doesn't feel like a drop-off. All the receivers, the quarterback, the offensive line, the running back room, it's all the same, he said. The new quarterback room, receivers, they're showing they want to win, and their mindset is based on winning, he says. All right, let's go to questions from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. Again, click the link in the show description below if you want to become a Locked On Canes Insider. ITK asks, hey, does it look like the receivers are in sync with Beck in practice? How many drop balls are you seeing during the sessions? In terms of the sync, it's been really good, especially, knowing that you got so many different receivers from last year, but a new quarterback from last year. It's very apparent that they have a good grasp of the playbook and that they're getting a grasp of the way Beck likes to throw and his habits and the way he wants his receivers running routes. And hey, I'm not going to say there's 0 drops in practice because that's part of practice. That's always going to happen. But it's never an alarming number of drops. I can remember covering practices 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, before Kevin Beard, because Kevin Beard, KB has a certain standard, like a KB coached receiver core. You're never going to see a ton of drops. But, his predecessor, I remember covering some practices where there were drops left and right, where Xavier Restrepo was the only guy who wasn't dropping passes. It's not like that. Overall, these guys are doing a good job. The communication seems to be there. And as I talked about earlier in the week, Beck is always talking with his guys on the side to kind of perfect, the route running to where he wants it. So I feel good about the connection there. It doesn't seem like this is, players meeting for the first time. It looks like they have some chemistry built already. Excuse me. We get this one from, I think I've already answered this one. How are the freshman defensive backs looking? He says, are any of the cornerbacks poised to help out at safety or nickel just to get them some burn? Well, it's tough to say because they do move players around, during practices. You go back to spring, I remember Chris Ewald getting some work at safety back then. Bryce Fitzgerald will probably be a safety here. That's the room that he's been working with so far. Amari Wallace has some versatility. I mentioned just based on kind of Damari Brown's skill set and body type, I think he has some versatility. I feel like Keontae Scott is probably going to be the starting nickel for this team. So defensive backs are going to move around, not quite as much as the offensive line. They cross-train a lot, but the DBs are going to move around. We get this one. How is the wide receiver rotation shaking out? Who do you feel are the projected starters? Let me answer that on the other side, because it's not a simple answer for that, folks, starting wide receivers. So far, it's living up to the hype of one of the better battleground position groups. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, the only ticket app that I use is Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You could save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And do you ever wonder before you buy what your view is actually going to look like? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. There are no hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out the portal. I'm losing my voice today, guys. This is terrible. It's probably all the traveling and all the shows I've been doing. But check out the portal podcast hosted by our good friend Brian Smith on the Locked On Network. He talks all things NIL, recruiting, transfer portal. He covers that and so much more. The portal is free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. In terms of how the wide receiver rotation is shaking out, I had a little chat after, I think, Thursday with Joe Zagacki, the voice of the Miami Hurricanes. And like he mentioned, and I agree, it's probably going to be more of a wide receiver by committee this year. Because last year, Miami had like their top 4 guys, clearly, Restrepo, Jacoby George, Isaiah Horton, and Sam Brown. And they didn't rotate a whole lot because they trusted their top 4 guys, and that's where almost all of their production came from. Whereas this year, you have younger up-and-coming players who have more to prove, who don't have as much experience. So this may obviously evolve throughout camp, and it's going to evolve, into the season even. I think the ones that have probably looked like the most reliable in terms of like the experience level times consistent performances. I'm very high on JoJo Trader. I'm high on CJ Daniels, because he's I'm sure a guy you can trust when the Bullets are live out there. I mean, he played for LSU last season. Had some good experience at Liberty prior to that. He's a 6-year guy. So experience does matter in this game when you're talking about starters. And then, it's a little harder to handicap the slot position because Ray Joseph, I shout him out. He's been practicing really well. I mean, if anyone tries to count Ray out, he's always making himself a factor. Tony Johnson has just looked reliable with the way he runs routes. Like he's the most experienced of the slot receivers. But Malachi Tony, you don't really feel like he's a true freshman, let alone, a reclassified freshman when he's out there. Like Tony could be a game changer. Like he's someone who can, potentially turn, 7-yard catch into a 70-yard touchdown. Like there's a lot of sizzle with his game, and he's also pretty good with the finer things, but he's a freshman. So he's going to have to create more consistency out there. I keep talking about how well Josh Moore is performing. I mean, I guess there could be a world where he wins a starting job as a true freshman. Like he looks that promising. But again, you want your freshmen to get experience before you truly trust them, especially when your opening game is Notre Dame. Keep that in mind, right? Like you're not opening against Bethune-Cookman, who you play second week of the season. You're opening against Notre Dame, who has one of the better defensive secondaries in the country. They limited Penn State to 0 catches from their wide receiver room in the national semifinal last year. So, it would not be surprising if the starting receivers on August 31st are, 3 of the most experienced guys in the room. But the young guys are going to play. Dalen Upshaw has also practiced well. Nye Carr. Chance Robinson is getting in good work and making up for lost time because he was battling through injuries last year. I didn't even mention Keelan Marion, who is, not only going to be, I think, a factor in the kick return game, but a factor in the receiver rotation. So, you got your certain guys. Like if you're asking me to kind of pencil in my personal starters at this moment, I'd probably stick with what I said about a week ago: CJ Daniels, JoJo Trader, and Tony Johnson. But the competitions have been good, and like I don't think any combination of those three positions would surprise me. I think the only thing that would be surprising is if JoJo Trader is not a starter. I think that's the only thing that would surprise me the first week of the year. We get this one from Mike in Pompano Beach, who says, "Is this the make or break year for Mario Cristobal?" In a lot of ways, it is, and this is his most overall talented roster, more talented than last year's roster, deeper than last year's roster. I mean, Cam Ward was a Band-Aid on a team that probably should not have won 10 games and would not have won 10 games if Ward had not been their quarterback last year and had such an incredible season. Not saying the team wasn't bad. I mean, they had some great moments last year, but the consistency wasn't there. The defense let them down on too many occasions. I believe they've fixed a lot of their issues from last year. Defensive secondary, they got a lot more juice in the linebacker room now this year, adding players like Bonner and Motore. Defensive line, you've got pass rushers that should be able to rotate in 2 or 3 deep at that position. And the offense should still be really good. So, and, you've got Carson Beck, who I know people are down on him for whatever reasons coming out of last year, but he looks like an NFL quarterback based on what I've seen from him so far. So you've got a deep team, and you want to build on last year's success. I mean, you can't go from 10 wins to 7 or 8 wins and expect to show that you're on a trajectory, because trajectory, that's a word that Cristobal has used a lot going back to last year, that look at the trajectory that Miami is on with the way they've recruited, with the way they've portaled, hopefully with the way they're developing talent, because there are some important homegrown players like Justin Scott, Cameron Bobby Pruitt, Popo Aguirre, Wes Bassaint, of course, who have opportunities to step up and have really big years. So the expectations are high based on everything that's been going on off the field with the program building. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what make or break means. Like, are you asking me, are heads going to roll after the season if they don't win 10 or 11 games? I don't know if I'd go that far. But if you're talking about the trajectory of this program and showing that Miami is on that path to return to greatness, you can't take a step back this year. You have to keep it moving forward. And I think that sort of expectation and that sort of pressure is something that Coach Cristobal embraces. Like, he understands. He takes a lot of responsibility in trying to bring the standard for Miami Hurricanes football back to what it was when he played here. He owns that. He takes that very personally. It is his life's mission. He didn't have to leave Oregon. He didn't get fired. In fact, Phil Knight was going to essentially write him a blank check to extend him at Oregon, but he decided to leave to come to his alma mater in his hometown to try to make Miami a powerhouse program again. And he will not rest until that happens. So, yeah, you could say it's a make or break year because you cannot afford to take a step back from last season. I feel strongly about that. We get this question. Hey, is it worth noting Cam Ward's 71 Madden rating? Man, I don't know. Apparently, I saw a chart that set Cam Ward has a 71 rating on the Madden video game, which apparently is really low compared to other rookie first-round quarterbacks over the years. Is it disrespectful? Probably. But that's been the story of Cam Ward's career. Coming out of high school, 0 stars, had 1 scholarship offer, Incarnate Word. Worked his way from Incarnate Word in FCS to Washington State to Miami into the #1 draft pick. And by the way, you remember on draft night, nobody was even talking about him because Mel Kiper was yapping his mouth about when Shedeur Sanders was going to get picked. So he didn't even get covered properly on draft night. So, I mean, Cam Ward is rated a 71. Just add another chip to those shoulders of his, because he's been, counted out and discounted his entire career. That is nothing new. I wanted to offer a shout out on this episode. My cousin, Coach Dennis Thomas, coaches a high school program in the Orlando area. Horizon Hawks in Winter Garden, Florida. And one of his players is a big Miami Hurricanes fan and listens to the show. And I'm excited about that because in Orlando, way too many Seminole fans, way too many Gator fans walking around, not nearly enough Miami fans. So the Horizon Hawks has themselves a good one. Hopefully he ends up being the MVP and a starter at every position all at once there. So I want to offer a shout out to Oscar. Good luck in your freshman year for the Horizon Hawks in Winter Garden, Florida. And thank you so much for being an everydayer to Locked On Canes. And I hope you go out there and absolutely crush it this season, my friend. I appreciate all you guys, Oscar and everyone else who's tuned in. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.